At 6:17 a.m., the security camera pinged, and everything changed. A quiet family breakfast shattered when a woman's face filled the screen, glaring, filming, whispering threats toward a private home. This was not a misunderstanding, it was obsession. What followed would expose entitlement, escalate into stalking, and end in a lawsuit no HOA handbook could defend against. The Ramirez family had moved into the neighborhood for peace, not power struggles. Their kids biked the cul-de-sac, their dogs slept by the window, and their weekends were ordinary. But across the street lived an HOA enforcer who believed cameras were weapons and rules were excuses. She started small, walking past the house, pointing her phone, narrating violations that didn't exist. Trash bins, chalk drawings, parked cars, everything became evidence. Each clip uploaded, each message sent, tightened a knot of fear the family couldn't ignore. Neighbors noticed her fixation, but shrugged it off as HOA drama. The Ramirezes didn't. They saved screenshots, logged dates, and installed clearer cameras. Every alert felt heavier. Every glance at the door brought a question: how far would she go? Then came the morning knock that never happened. Instead, the feed showed her again, inches from the lens, smiling this time. She read the address aloud, mentioned children by name, and promised inspections. That was the moment fear turned into resolve. Inside, the parents held each other and chose action over silence. They called a lawyer, filed a police report, and sent a cease and desist. The camera kept recording, so did she. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test boundaries and accountability. By noon, emails flew, tempers rose, and the neighborhood buzzed. What looked like petty HOA enforcement had crossed into harassment. And when the next alert chimed, the family knew this story wouldn't end quietly or cheaply. Across town, the woman reviewed her footage, convinced righteousness was on her side. She mistook persistence for permission and proximity for power. Cameras, she believed, granted authority. But the law draws lines she hadn't read. Privacy matters. Harassment compounds. Intent counts. As the sun climbed, two paths diverged. One family preparing evidence, one enforcer escalating behavior. The first court filing would change everything, and the camera that started it all would finish it. Before nightfall, the choice was clear. Document, protect, and confront through lawful channels. Viewers, stay with us, because the next chapter reveals the first legal move, the mistake that sealed the case, and how a camera turned harassment into undeniable proof. Nothing about this dispute was small, and nothing about the consequences would be either, once accountability arrived. Justice moves methodically, but it moves. Next, the letters land. And the clock starts. Stay ready for what follows. It changes lives, fast. Don't miss it. Watch closely now. The cease and desist letter arrived by certified mail, plain white envelope, unmistakable message. It outlined dates, times, screenshots, and video stills, each one documenting her behavior with clinical precision. The family's attorney warned that continued contact would constitute harassment. For most people, that would end it. For her, it became fuel instead. She read the letter aloud on her phone, recording herself, mocking the legal language. She posted clips to a private HOA group, claiming intimidation. Support trickled in from a few loyalists, emboldening her. That afternoon, the camera captured her pacing the sidewalk, narrating alleged violations louder than before. The family adjusted routines. Curtains stayed closed. Kids played inside. The dog barked at shadows. Each notification tightened nerves. Still, the evidence grew. The camera logged timestamps automatically. Audio captured her comments. Even license plate reflections appeared in frames. Documentation transformed fear into a record. 2 days later, she escalated. She knocked repeatedly, stepping into frame, refusing to leave. The parents stayed silent, calling non-emergency police while recording continued. When an officer arrived, she pivoted, insisting she was checking compliance. The officer advised distance and left. The warning went unheeded. Emails followed. Late-night messages. Accusations. Threats of fines she couldn't issue. The attorney responded once, attaching statutes on harassment and privacy. After that, silence. Let the camera speak. Let the pattern form. Courts recognize persistence, not passion. Neighbors began noticing. One shared their own clip, her filming another home. Another admitted receiving similar messages. A pattern emerged beyond one address. The family's case widened. What started as protection became community accountability. She believed visibility equaled power. Standing near the lens, she smirked, waving, daring consequences. She didn't realize each wave strengthened the claim. Intent became obvious. Distance shrank. Frequency increased. The legal threshold crossed quietly, decisively. Then came the certified package. A complaint filed in civil court, alleging harassment, stalking, and emotional distress. An injunction request followed, seeking mandated distance and penalties. The camera footage was indexed, time-coded, undeniable. A judge would see what neighbors had shrugged off. When service papers arrived, her confidence cracked. She called allies, demanded emergency meetings, blamed conspiracies. But paper outruns bravado. The court date loomed. Compliance was no longer optional. The family exhaled, not relieved, but steady. The process had begun. The camera pinged again that night. She stood farther back, reading the notice aloud, voice shaking. For the first time, she left quickly. Boundaries had teeth, and soon, they would bite harder. The first court hearing arrived quietly, without sirens or spectacle, yet its weight pressed on everyone involved. The family sat together, notes organized, footage cued, breathing evenly. Across the room, the WA Karen appeared confident, dressed sharply, clutching a binder filled with printed rules, as if bylaws could outrank state law today. When proceedings began, the judge asked simple questions. Dates, distances, frequency. The family's attorney answered calmly, presenting timelines and short clips. Each video played only seconds, but together they told a relentless story. The camera angle never changed. Her behavior did. Again and again, she approached, filmed, narrated, and lingered. Her attorney tried reframing. Community oversight, public sidewalk, free expression. The judge nodded, then asked about persistence. About naming children. About recording after written notice. Silence followed. The clips resumed. The courtroom watched her smile fade as her own voice echoed from speakers, taunting and threatening consequences she never had authority to impose. The judge granted a temporary restraining order on the spot. 100 feet. No contact. No filming. No messages. Violations would escalate penalties immediately. The family felt a measured relief, not celebration. Protection, at last, had a boundary drawn in ink. Outside, she confronted reporters she'd invited herself, spinning the ruling as oppression. The footage undercut her narrative before she finished. Neighbors watched online, recognizing scenes they'd dismissed. Messages poured in, offering statements. The case widened again. Days passed. Compliance lasted hours. The camera caught her hovering at 98 feet. Phone raised, narrating technicalities. The family didn't respond. The attorney did. A motion filed. Clips attached. The clock ticked. At the follow-up hearing, consequences landed. The judge imposed fines, mandated harassment training, and warned of contempt. The words were precise, the tone firm. Rules had finally found their place beneath the law. The neighborhood changed. Meetings grew quieter. Signs came down. People waved again. The kids returned outside, cautiously at first. The dog slept by the window once more. The camera still watched, but now it felt like a shield. She retreated, posting less, deleting more. But the damage lingered. The family filed the civil suit fully, seeking damages for distress and costs. The evidence stack grew taller than any binder of rules. As depositions approached, reality settled. Persistence wasn't courage, it was liability. The camera had not invaded privacy, it documented harm. Intent had been proven, pattern established. The outcome felt inevitable, and yet, one more escalation loomed, the mistake that would seal everything. Viewers, stay with us. The next chapter reveals the violation that crossed the final line, the clip that changed leverage, and how a single step too far turned warnings into judgment. Justice sharpens slowly, then strikes. Ready to continue. The violation happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that tempts complacency. School pickup had just ended. The family's driveway sat empty. The camera remained on, quietly vigilant. At 3:42 p.m., the alert chimed, and there she was again, stepping into frame with deliberate confidence, phone raised, narrating boundaries as if testing them. She stopped at the edge of the restraining order line, then crossed it by inches. She smiled, zoomed in, and read the family's names from a package label left near the door. She spoke slowly, savoring the moment. "Public information," she said. The camera captured everything, including the distance markers painted by the city curb. The parents watched in disbelief. They didn't speak. They didn't open the door. They called their attorney and forwarded the clip. Within minutes, a reply came back. "Do not engage, preserve the footage, call police." The family complied. Officers arrived while the camera kept recording. When confronted, she argued measurement. 98 feet, 99. The officer checked the map overlay from the footage, then the curb markers, then the laser measure. The number settled clearly beyond dispute. She had crossed the line. Again, after notice, after court, after warnings, the officer issued a citation for violating the restraining order and documented the incident thoroughly. Body cameras synced timestamps with the home footage. The chain of evidence closed neatly. The family's attorney filed an emergency motion for contempt that evening, attaching the clip as Exhibit A. At the contempt hearing, the judge watched the video twice. No commentary, no interruptions. The room stayed silent except for her recorded voice. When it ended, the judge spoke plainly. The order had been clear. The violation was deliberate. Intent was undeniable. Sanctions followed immediately. She was fined heavily, ordered to pay the family's legal fees to date, and warned that any further violations could result in arrest. The civil case gained leverage overnight. Settlement discussions shifted tone. The family felt steadier, though still cautious. Accountability had teeth now. Neighbors noticed the change. Her presence vanished from sidewalks. Online posts disappeared. The WA issued a neutral statement emphasizing respect and privacy. Meetings adopted conduct rules. Cameras went up elsewhere, not in fear, but in solidarity. The family reviewed the footage one last time and archived it. The camera stayed on, but alerts quieted. Sleep returned in fragments, then whole nights. The kids laughed outside again. Ordinary afternoons resumed, yet consequences were still unfolding. Damages, testimony, and a public record remained. The next chapter reveals how the civil suit concluded, what accountability cost, and why one camera reshaped an entire neighborhood's understanding of power and privacy. Stay with us as resolution comes into focus. With the contempt ruling on record, the civil lawsuit accelerated. Depositions were scheduled quickly, and the tone changed from posturing to calculation. The family's attorney outlined damages carefully: emotional distress, lost work hours, security upgrades, and attorney fees. Each category tied back to specific dates and clips. The camera wasn't just evidence, it was a timeline. During her deposition, the WA Karen struggled to maintain control. She insisted she was misunderstood, claimed community duty, and blamed stress. Then the questions narrowed. Why continue after written notice? Why approach after the restraining order? Why mention children by name? Each answer conflicted with footage played moments later. The contradictions stacked, undeniable. Her attorney requested breaks. She grew defensive, then quiet. The camera clips didn't argue, they showed tone, distance, frequency, everything visible. When asked whether she believed the family deserved peace, she paused too long. The silence spoke volumes. The family's depositions were shorter. They described routine disruptions, fear, and the moment trust in their neighborhood cracked. They explained why curtains stayed closed and why their children stopped playing outside. The judge wouldn't hear feelings alone. The footage supported every claim. The camera bridged experience and proof. Mediation followed. A neutral room, a long table, offers passed back and forth. The family sought accountability more than money. She sought closure without admission. The mediator returned with numbers and terms. Distance requirements, a permanent injunction, mandatory training, public apology restrictions, costs covered. After hours, an agreement emerged. She would pay damages, reimburse legal fees, and accept a permanent no-contact order. Any violation would trigger automatic penalties. The WA would revise enforcement policies, prohibit filming of residences, and establish an independent complaint process. Cameras would be respected, not challenged. Signing day arrived quietly. No speeches, no cameras allowed, pens moved, pages turned. The family felt relief mixed with exhaustion. Justice, it turns out, feels practical. It fixes harm and prevents repeats. It doesn't need applause. News spread locally, not headlines, conversations. Neighbors shared lessons learned. Power without restraint corrodes. Documentation protects. Law matters more than loudness. The camera, once a source of anxiety, became a symbol of boundaries. She complied. Accounts went silent. Sidewalks cleared. The neighborhood breathed easier. The family replaced fear with routine. Morning breakfasts returned. Afternoons filled with bikes and chalk. Evenings grew quiet again. Still, the story wasn't over. A final step remained. Accountability beyond one case. The next chapter reveals how the law changed, how neighbors organized safeguards, and why this lawsuit reshaped community culture. Stay with us as the ripple effects unfold and the lasting impact becomes clear. Change arrived slowly, then all at once. After settlement, the HOA board scheduled an emergency meeting, not to assign blame, but to repair trust. Residents filled the room, cautious yet hopeful. The agenda focused on privacy, enforcement limits, and accountability, themes absent before but unavoidable now. The board opened by acknowledging harm. Cameras had been treated like threats instead of protections. Rules had been enforced without empathy. A new framework was proposed. No filming private homes, no direct confrontations, all complaints routed through an independent ombudsman. Transparency replaced intimidation. Neighbors spoke next. One described feeling watched while gardening. Another admitted silence out of fear. A parent thanked the family for standing firm. Each story echoed the same lesson. Power concentrates unless checked. Documentation democratizes truth. Training followed. Board members completed harassment prevention courses and learned legal boundaries. The phrase, reasonable expectation of privacy, entered common language. Signs were updated. Policies rewritten. Fines required due process. Appeals gained timelines. Cameras, once controversial, were affirmed as lawful safeguards. The family attended quietly, not seeking praise. Their presence grounded the discussion. The camera that captured harassment now captured progress. Meetings were recorded, minutes published, and decisions archived. Sunlight, the best disinfectant, became policy. Outside the room, practical changes took root. A neighborhood hotline launched. Mediation became mandatory before enforcement. Officers partnered with communities for de-escalation guidance. Small steps, yes, but durable ones. Culture shifts through systems, not slogans. Weeks later, compliance proved real. No surprise inspections. No sidewalk filming. Children played freely. Dogs slept by windows. Alerts fell silent. The family reduced camera sensitivity, keeping it on but less watchful. Peace felt earned. Across the street, the former enforcer adapted. She avoided contact, completed training, and stopped posting. Consequences reshaped behavior more effectively than arguments ever had. The lesson traveled faster than gossip. Harassment costs more than restraint. The case inspired others nearby. A different HOA adopted similar reforms. A city council workshop cited the lawsuit anonymously. Rights education spread. The camera's legacy extended beyond one block. By season's end, the neighborhood felt familiar again, not naive, but wiser. Boundaries were clearer, processes fairer, trust rebuilt through rules that protected everyone equally. Accountability had become ordinary. Local media quietly took note, reframing the incident as education rather than spectacle. Workshops formed, pamphlets circulated, lawyers volunteered clinics, residents learned rights, obligations, and remedies. Confidence replaced whispers. Preparedness replaced panic. Communities thrive when informed together across neighborhoods, fostering empathy, restraint, fairness, safety, trust, accountability, resilience, cooperation, stability, equity, dignity. Still, one question lingered. Would the peace last without vigilance? The family believed yes, because systems now stood where individuals once stood alone. In the final chapter, we'll see how closure arrived, what the camera ultimately meant, and why standing up reshaped more than a lawsuit. Closure doesn't arrive with a single moment, it gathers quietly, like light returning to a room. Months after the settlement, the family noticed how little they checked the camera. Alerts stayed off for days. The habit of vigilance softened into routine. Safety no longer required constant proof. That change mattered most. The parents reflected on how fear had reshaped ordinary life. Breakfasts rushed, curtains drawn, conversations whispered. The camera had once amplified anxiety by revealing threats, yet it also restored control by capturing truth. Without it, their voices might have sounded exaggerated. With it, reality spoke plainly. Neighbors stopped by more often. Not to gossip, but to reconnect. Shared meals replaced hushed texts. Children crossed driveways freely again. Trust, once fractured, rebuilt through consistency. The HOA's new processes worked because people used them. Complaints went through channels, not doorsteps. Distance prevented conflict. The family's attorney closed the file, leaving copies and reminders. Keep records. No rights. Don't engage directly. It felt anticlimactic, and that was the point. Justice aims to normalize peace, not prolong drama. Across the neighborhood, cameras remained visible, but their meaning had changed. They weren't symbols of suspicion anymore. They were tools, like locks or lights, quietly present, rarely noticed. The debate shifted from why record to how to respect. The former enforcer stayed away. When paths crossed at a distance, there were no words, no gestures. Boundaries held. Accountability, it turned out, didn't require reconciliation to be effective. It required compliance and space. One evening, the family reviewed the earliest clip, the morning that started everything. They watched without shaking hands this time. The image felt distant, almost instructional. They archived it and labeled the folder simply, "Resolved." The kids asked questions later, curious but unafraid. The parents answered honestly, framing the story as a lesson in standing up calmly, documenting carefully, and trusting systems designed to protect. Empowerment replaced fear in the telling. The Neighborhood Association published its annual report. Privacy violations, 0. Complaints resolved through mediation, most. Legal actions, none. Boring statistics, the best kind. Stability had returned. Word spread beyond the block. New homeowners asked about policies before moving in. Realtors mentioned reforms. Expectations aligned early. Conflict prevention began before disputes formed. That was the quiet victory. On a Sunday morning, sunlight hit the driveway just right. The dogs slept by the window. Bikes leaned against the fence. The camera stayed on, unnoticed. Life resumed its ordinary rhythm, enriched by hard-earned clarity. If there's a lesson here, it's simple and durable. Document, don't escalate. Set boundaries, don't bait. Trust the process, then improve it. One family did that, a neighborhood followed. In our final chapter, we'll reflect on the broader takeaway, how ordinary tools protect extraordinary rights, and why accountability, once established, becomes invisible. Stay with us to close the loop. Looking back, the family realized how close they came to giving up. In the earliest days, silence felt safer than resistance. The idea of confronting an HOA enforcer seemed exhausting, risky, and socially costly. Many people endure harassment precisely because the process feels heavier than the harm. This story changed that assumption. What made the difference was not anger or confrontation, but structure. The family didn't argue online. They didn't shout across sidewalks. They documented, consulted professionals, and followed procedure. Each step transformed emotion into evidence. The camera became a neutral witness, immune to manipulation, bias, or intimidation. Experts later explained why the case mattered. Harassment cases often fail due to ambiguity. Intent is hard to prove. Patterns get dismissed as coincidence. But consistent footage removes doubt. Frequency becomes visible. Escalation becomes measurable. Context stays intact. The law depends on clarity, and clarity depends on records. The lawsuit also highlighted a misconception about authority. WA roles carry administrative power, not personal dominance. When individuals blur that line, accountability corrects it. The court didn't attack community governance, it reinforced it by defining limits. Rules function best when restrained by rights. For viewers watching this unfold, the takeaway is practical. Know your local laws. Install cameras legally. Save logs. Avoid direct engagement when harassment begins. Seek counsel early. Communities work when systems replace personalities. Protection should never depend on who shouts loudest. The family's experience inspired educational workshops hosted by a nearby legal clinic. Attendance surprised organizers. People wanted tools, not drama. They wanted to understand privacy, documentation, and dispute resolution. Empowerment, it turned out, was contagious. Online reactions followed a similar pattern. Initial outrage cooled into curiosity. Commenters asked how to file reports, what language to use, and when to escalate. The conversation matured. Stories shared. Best practices emerged. Collective knowledge grew. The former enforcers' actions faded from focus. What endured was the framework created in response. Policies changed. Training normalized. Processes improved. The harm became a catalyst for reform rather than a permanent scar. In time, even the camera footage lost its emotional charge. It remained stored, available if needed, but no longer defining. The family learned that safety isn't the absence of tools, it's the confidence you won't need them often. This chapter of their lives closed not with triumph, but with competence. They knew how to respond if challenged again. They trusted systems that now worked. That confidence was the real settlement. As we approach the end of this story, one final reflection remains. How do ordinary people protect peace without becoming guarded? How do communities balance vigilance and trust? The answer lies ahead, in the final chapter, where the long-term impact becomes clear and the story finds its quiet conclusion. Years later, the neighborhood still tells the story, not as gossip, but as guidance. New residents hear it during welcome meetings, framed as a reminder that peace is protected through process, not personality. The family listens quietly, grateful that their experience became instruction rather than legend. What endures most is how ordinary the solution was. No heroics, no viral confrontation, just documentation, patience, and law. The camera didn't escalate conflict, it slowed it down, giving truth time to surface. Accountability arrived because records existed, not because voices were raised. The children grew older, barely remembering the tension. They remember bikes, chalk, and neighbors waving. The parents remember learning to trust systems while strengthening them. Both memories coexist, forming resilience without bitterness. The HOA continued evolving. Annual training became standard. Privacy audits were routine. Complaints dropped. Mediation solved disputes early. The board learned that authority earns legitimacy only when constrained by fairness. The neighborhood learned that silence is not harmony, and boundaries are not hostility. Occasionally, someone asks whether the family regrets installing the camera. The answer is always the same. Tools are neutral. Intent defines impact. Used responsibly, cameras protect dignity as much as property. Used recklessly, they expose abuse. Context matters. The former enforcer moved on. Time softened edges. Consequences taught restraint. No redemption arc was required. Compliance was enough. Communities heal when harm stops and safeguards remain. For viewers, the lesson is transferable. If harassment begins, slow the moment. Write things down. Save evidence. Avoid engagement. Seek advice. Let patterns speak. Power shrinks when exposed to daylight. This story ends without spectacle, and that is the point. Justice rarely looks dramatic from afar. It looks like policy updates, quiet evenings, and children playing freely. It looks like trust restored through clarity. As the camera continues recording, unnoticed, it symbolizes something larger. Not surveillance, but stewardship. A shared commitment to respect, process, and accountability. When those principles guide action, neighborhoods thrive. Long after court papers fade, the family measures success differently. Safety feels boring again. Procedures outlast personalities. Disputes resolve early. Neighbors assume goodwill because systems verify fairness. Cameras rest quietly, consulted rarely, trusted always. The story becomes less about one person, more about shared standards that protect everyone equally, consistently, and humanely. Thank you for staying through every chapter. If this story helped, share it forward. Knowledge is the best deterrent. Remember, protect peace by building systems that make peace ordinary again. May this guide viewers to choose calm persistence over reaction, evidence over emotion, and community over ego, whenever conflicts arise unexpectedly. These choices transform moments of tension into opportunities for learning, reform, and lasting trust across neighborhoods everywhere. That legacy endures quietly, long after cameras stop mattering. It remains the truest measure of justice achieved. Together,